Hey, Juan. In this session, we've talked about a wide variety of topics. We've talked about the Australian political climate, what's happening with Pauline Hanson, how come she's getting so much distribution, what's changed in the global climate that's made her so popular right now. We've also spoken about hard assets versus SaaS. Where are people investing right now? Where is the puck going? And how can you get to where the puck's going from where you're sitting right now? Eric and Mark are also discussing this new business that they've been creating in the background, a lot of exciting updates. And we dive super deep into the world of AI, not just pontificating, but practical applications on how you can use it in your business today. And I dive deep into how I'm using it into my business right now, literally step by step, and the tools that you can use that isn't just large language models, but things you can apply in your business right now and how to get the most out of this stuff. So strap in. It's an exciting session. I can't wait for you to watch it. And I'm keen to hear your feedback in the comments.
All right, guys, here we are. Hey, what a week it has been. We've got lots of stuff happening in the political side. We've got, honestly, I wish I owned more gold than what I do. We've got metals that are just going through the roof. And we actually have an unfamiliar face on the podcast this Friday. And that unfamiliar face is Rafay Hussein. Raf is a good friend of ours for a long time. You might have seen him on the podcast before. But he's actually moved from Australia. Now he lives in Dubai, where he's living and running his business. And he runs a business, very successful business called the Uptick. Raf, how are you?
I'm good, brother. Keen to be on here, man.
Yeah, good, man. It's good to see you. Now, just so people understand what Raf actually does, just to put in a little bit of context, right? So the TikTok space is massive and is scaling at all-time highs, right? So think of your business, right? Instead of renting in a TikTok agency, right? They come to you and your team as basically an in-house engine, right? Product selection, creators, offers, ads, and they're actually operator run. So instead of you having to go out and hire people, they want the actual founder to run it themselves. And they teach you everything from A to Z in the TikTok space. And they've generated now over $100 million with their businesses that they work with. So that's a little bit of what Raf does. He does so much else. But guys, we have a lot on the agenda today. And I want to get right into it with, let's speak about Pauline Hanson. And I don't want you guys to get scared and go, here we go. We're going all political again, because these podcasts is going to change a little bit, right? To a lot more about property and wealth creation and business and how-tos. But we have a little secret, and we're going to be interviewing Pauline Hanson next week again on this podcast. And I think it's going to be the safest odds. Yeah, that we've ever done, because at the moment she has a massive amount of momentum, right? Like all you got to do is open up news channels, and it's all about the primary votes that they're getting now, right? It's soaring through the roof to the point where they're actually creating chaos amongst the coalition. So Mark, tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing with Pauline Hanson, and we'll go into it.
Yeah, so I was at the end of last year, I was like, guys, we've got to get Pauline Hanson back on. She was just at Mar-a-Lago. She's sitting in the same room as Trump, like she's hot right now. Little did I know she was about to get so much hotter. And like her or love her, she is definitely now having an impact. And you could say, really, for the first time in 30 years, I reckon she just might be changing the face of politics a little more, and that's starting to show up in the numbers. So you mentioned it before, Eric, the primary vote, which is like a news poll, where people basically vote. They conduct a survey, and people select who their first preference would be. And so Labor is on top with 32%, down 4% from the last vote. One Nation is second on 22%, up 7%. So this is the first time ever in history that an independent or a smaller party has overtaken the first two parties, Labor and Liberals, in the voting, in the primary vote, in the polling. This is first time ever. So
talk about persistency and grit. I mean, this woman has been, lady, I should say, has been at it for 30 odd years, and has finally cut through. So it's certainly a massive change on the cards, that's for sure. I think she's, this morning I read an article out strips Susan Lane now as well. So she certainly is creating up a storm. But just on that note, because we are interviewing Pauline next week, throw in the comments what you'd like to know, what you'd like us to ask Pauline specifically. The more the better. We'll collate those questions and certainly put them to us. So whether they're on the a negative or a positive, anything in between, please drop them in the comments so we've got some real viewer feedback on what you'd like to know.
I mean,
100%.
you've done that already, right, Mark? Like you sent
Yeah.
us a message today going, your Instagram, you asked people, hey, what would you like to be asked? And you've dumped a bunch of questions in there. And they're all relevant questions, right? Like it goes to show you, I think there's a lot of dissatisfaction amongst people, right? Like especially there's a lot of growing support in regional areas. And I'm calling it right now the Barnaby Joyce effect, right? Now, and those of you guys that know me, I'm not massive into politics, right? Mark probably is out of the four of us. I mean, Raf wouldn't even know what's going on because he's in Dubai and he really probably doesn't care. But when you look at what we're doing here as a country, not a lot of people are getting stuck into the whole political view. But I think it's starting, like you said, Mark, it's starting to build momentum. People aren't happy with Labor. They're not happy with Liberal. And there's so much unrest at the moment, which I think is a great opportunity for someone like Pauline, because she's talking about, a lot of topics that people are upset about, like, population growth and migration and free speech. She just came out with this new song that is climbing the Australian iTunes charts, with partner with
Valance.
Holly Valance, right? Called Kiss Kiss in brackets XX my arse, right? Which is a very anti-woke. And I think what would be good, Jerome, is if you could put the actual video in the clip, the clip of the video in this podcast for people to listen to, because it is like literally out there. You've got, a woman with hairy legs, I'm anti-woke and I'm biologically a man, like all this kind of stuff. And it's pretty in your face. But like, what are your guys' thoughts though, James? Like, I know you're not a big political guy, but do you feel the momentum with politics?
Totally. I mean, people have had enough, and we've had a lot of polys on them. It just seems, and we ask the same questions pretty much. They're like, how are you directly going to impact it? What are you going to do? I think she's just got a 30-year runway of cred, and people finally got the shits enough to tobacco. I mean, and also, like she takes no prisoners at all. I mean, she ripped our PM to pieces, and then she was I saw another clip this morning of her on the project. I don't watch mainstream TV at all, but they were trying to censor and control it, and she absolutely took Waleed out. And it was like a full assassination. She took no prisoners, remained super calm, and this guy, you could see, it was just a bit too hard, and she just basically shot him to pieces, stood up respectfully. He's saying, cut the mic, and she goes, you can do whatever you like. And she calmly left with grace, and basically put him in his spot as well, about censoring mainstream media, took out her earpiece and walked off the set. A massive fuck you, basically. You can't control me, and your mainstream media is bullshit. And that's why we love to have her on the pod, because we're not going to get any censorship from us.
It's happening. We're running a 2-day property development event at the luxury Mondrian Hotel in Burleigh Heads here on the Gold Coast, and we want you there. Because if property development is even on your radar, this will save you years of guessing. Over 2 days, you'll see how deals are actually found, how people fund them without having to be rich, and how projects go from the idea to actually being built. You'll hear from people doing it right now, with special guest Michael Matusik, Australia's leading property analyst and commentator on what the market is actually doing right now. Funding specialists showing you how money actually flows. You'll leave knowing what your next move should be. Check the link below, grab your early bird tickets now, and let's start developing.
Yeah. And it's, like, if the viewer at home is kind of thinking, fucking, I hate politics, why the hell is this relevant? Well, it's super relevant, right?
Now,
And it's not just because it's Pauline, it's because the world is now arrived at a place, the populist movement, everything that's happened with the Trump, MAGA, UK reform, everything that's happening gives rise to people like Pauline. That's why she's been largely ineffective for 30 years. And now she's starting to be effective because of where we are in the world. It's important for high net worth individuals. It's important for unemployable people, because someone like Pauline, if she gets enough votes, might not be in power, but she can have more of a say in what happens in government. Now, that can create a whole lot of volatility. Political volatility creates portfolio risk, right? Immigration policy, tax policy, if all that changes, that creates risk to investors, right? And so the case for diversification is getting stronger and stronger, whether it be Dubai property, Singapore property, gold, Bitcoin, metals. You're seeing all this shit is ripping. This stuff is ripping because we're entering a new paradigm globally, right? And now that is arriving on our shores here in Australia. And Pauline is just the figure point of that, right? She's the figurehead of it. Whether you like the culture or the politics or whatever, it's irrelevant. It's important to understand kind of what's happening. And I think, the what was really interesting is we had a clip go viral from when we had Jared and Greta on. I asked Jared, I'm like, Pauline's starting to get some momentum, but the independents, they seem to kind of take from one another. Why don't doesn't everyone kind of join together? And Rita Panahay asked Pauline this exact question on Sky News, and Pauline was just like, you've got to come join One Nation. I'm not going out to source people. You got to come join One Nation, and you got to be aligned with what One Nation stands for. And she actually mentioned, I don't have any ego. I'm just pushing these policies. And I'm thinking, geez, sometimes you wonder whether they're actually watching your clips and reading the comments, because it seemed to mimic a lot of stuff that was said in those comments. So I just think it's super interesting right now, and we should pay attention.
I just look at it as like the internal divisions, right? Like between liberals and nationals, as an example. Like there's a lot of fighting in parliament between those two parties, right? Which, in my opinion, when you have those internal divisions and you have leadership issues and policy confusion, what does that do to the voter? It confuses the voter.
Yeah.
Right, that's what it does. It goes, man, these guys aren't strong in they're not strong in the direction. And this is any leader, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, it doesn't matter, right? Like if you have strong leadership, and I look at Pauline Hanson as an example, like she has her policies, you either like her or you don't like her, and she's very, very straighty 180 on her policies. And I think what a lot of people are gathering from that is no confusion. It is what it is.
She said that, Eric. She said to Rita, sorry, dude. She said to Rita, she's like, there's no division within One Nation. She said, I've created this party in such a way that everyone is aligned and there's no division. She says, do you know what I mean? Like if people are going to come to One Nation, they've got to toe the one. You've hit on a massive point, right? And I think, the jury is still out, right? Does she have the economic policy? Does she have the policies to successfully govern the country, right? Because economic policy, I think, is where it's at. You got a successful economy, you'll have a successful reign, right? But yeah, she's definitely showing strong leadership from within the party, and that's something coalition and nationals are not.
Just as a litmus test, if we went to a poll right now, who are you voting for, boys? Labor, coalition, Pauline? If that was the three.
I'm inclined to, after the last week, I'm inclined to vote for Pauline. Like it's just, I want to see.
I think Barnaby on the team certainly adds a bit of bench depth for her, given the fact that he was deputy for some time. So you wonder whether there's going to be a few other rats jumping ship from the other parties into One Nation. Now they have got the momentum to save the political career somewhat.
I'm keen to hear from Raf.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a very different take too, boys. I mean, being like obviously here in Dubai, growing up in Australia, I think I'm going to look at it more from a macro sense. I think it's useful for the users as well. Like, why is this happening right now? And partly it could be because she's been in the game for 30 years, but I think it's a confluence of like two major things that are happening. So globally, the Overton window has changed. So people are starting to be more direct. They're calling out their opponents darkly, as opposed to it being a battlefield of policies. It's a battlefield of personality. And so the growth that you're seeing is because people are now enlisting themselves in cults of personality. That's the reason why all these leaders globally are starting to like grow at this pace. And so being from the outside looking in, the way what I'm looking at is like, okay, so the Overton windows change. People are being more direct. People are enlisting into personalities, but also the other confluence is the fact that people are using digital media and social media to be able to distribute what they feel. And like that music video is like a prime example of like, hey, why is like think about like Trump in the past, like everything he says is clippable. Everything is getting like promoted, and all his like political opponents at the time didn't see the value of it. Then you see the likes of Vivek, and then obviously you see everyone on like both sides of the political aisle now starting to use it and see it. And I think that sort of um, digital media literacy is coming to the political sphere in Australia, which I think
It,
is like a huge thing, you know?
it's so interesting coming from you because you obviously come from that content creator space, right? Where that personal brand and that content
Mm,
creation is so important. And I made a couple notes, right? Like she's gone viral multiple times, right? For the
mm,
some people would say crazy things she does, right? Like
mm,
these videos as an example, right? It's all over the news. No one else is doing that. No one else in
mm,
politics would even dare to do that. You know, her going into, into the, um, to the meetings as an example with the burqa. Like no one else would do something like that. Whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, people are talking about it. She literally, right? If you have a silhouette, if you think of Pauline Hanson, everyone knows her as that red-haired lady with that kind of strong attitude, right? Like you could put a
mm.
silhouette around her. You can't really do that on any other leaders in the country. And I think you've
I
nailed
wouldn't
something there,
know
Raf.
I wouldn't know Susan Lay if she stopped me in the street.
Yeah, no.
Like, I
But
wouldn't
but
I
you but you'll know Pauline Hanson, and I think that's you've nailed it there, Raf. And like the question, going back to the question that James said, "Hey guys, who you're voting for?" And this is going to be leading into the next topic that we're going to be talking about is I'm not sure because as much as I like some of Pauline's policies, right? I'm a pro property guy, right? And her shutting down migration is when I put my business hat on and my I guess what people would say, you know, oh, call me greedy, call me whatever you want, but these are the things why you got to start knowing what's happening because if she does come in as an example, and I know a lot of people in the comments will say that will never happen and the rest of it, but imagine if she did come in and she put strain right on that border and the amount of people aren't coming in anymore. What happens to the property market? What happens to the strategy of going, shoot, interest rates might be going up next week. Pauline Hanson might come into, and then you start thinking to yourself, oh man, maybe I got to actually change strategies, right? And this is where I want to go into our next topic, right? And this is something that you know a lot about, Mark, right? And this is where we want to get more into wealth creation, right? Where are people investing? What is happening, right? You're talking about hard assets off camera, right? And SaaS products. SaaS was the thing, 10, 15 years ago. Now they're calling it it's dying, right? Software as a service. And then you got these hard assets coming through. We've got gold happening. All these things are happening in front of our eyes. So explain to us a little bit what you mean between hard assets versus SaaS as an example, Mark.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned in one of the groups, I went on a bit of a riff in one of our group chats about the fact that we all need to be investing in scarce assets over abundant assets. And the guys are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, long scarcity, long hard assets and scarcity, short SaaS companies. So Mark Andreessen, which is the founder of A16Z, they've been one of the most prolific venture capitalist firms over the last 20 years, invested in all the massive software companies that you're seeing today. And Mark Andreessen once said, software is eating the world, right? And you only have to think of Microsoft and Salesforce CRM and all these different companies that have had astronomical valuations. But there's a confluence of things happening at the moment that we need to be paying attention to. AI on the application level is basically going to be software in your pocket. You are going to literally be able to write programs by speaking into your phone, and that is going to cannibalize, that is going to kill all of these software companies. We spoke about it last week. Elon Musk is building macro hard. as a direct dig at Microsoft, and you're seeing the valuation of these software companies come down. But there's another massive thing that's happening at the same time. A lot of people still think this AI revolution is LLMs, right? The models that we use, Gemini, OpenAI, ChatGPT, etc. But that is only like a small slither of what AI really is. Jensen Huang has, the CEO of NVIDIA, has mentioned many times what he sees. He sees AI as a 5-layer cake. And on the bottom layer, the most important layer of this AI revolution, which, and there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be bigger than electricity, bigger than the internet, bigger than the industrial revolution. It is going to be the biggest technological revolution ever, and it's going to require the biggest build out ever. And he says on the bottom of this cake is energy and connectivity, right? Because the base of all this AI being able to work is you need to be connected to electricity and energy. Above that, you have the hardware stack. So you've got the chips and the silicon that go into these data centers, etc. Above the silicon and the chips, you have the cloud layer, which is the training of all these models on these data centers, right? So in order for these data centers to be useful, they have to be trained on these models. Then above that, you have the LLMs. And then above that, you're going to have the application layer, which we're only just starting to see that at the moment. And that is when the new value is going to start to accrue to these companies when they nail the apps, right? But what that cake is going to require is the biggest build out in history, the biggest infrastructure build out in history. This layered cake are the new factories, right? And they're estimating that's going to be an $85 trillion build out. There's only like $900 trillion in the world today, right? So we're talking about 10% of the money in the world today is going to go to this new build out. What's that trade? That trade basically is going to be the things that are required in this build out. If you look at the price of silver, like I've got some charts that'll show you that solar panels and all the things that are required for AI builds, silver is one of the massive metals that's required, right? It's not just a bubble. All these assets are being repriced because all these countries, all these supply chains need these hard assets to build this new layer. If you're a country that doesn't put any focus into this infrastructure build out, you're going to be left behind, right? So you go on.
It's interesting because like when you start looking at some of these assets, like, gold and silver, people are, buying it, investing it, putting it away. But what's happening now, making certain things, and obviously silver's in a lot of things, but now it's going to be in a lot more things, right? So when people are going, why am I buying silver? Most people will be thinking, I'm buying silver because price go up, because people are lining up. Let me go in. They're not actually thinking deeply, right? Like you are talking about these layers and going, what is actually silver required for, right? I just heard Chamath recently this week talking about how he thinks, in his opinion, copper is going to go parabolic in 2026, right? Because everyone's talking about gold and silver, but no one's, so there's some people talking about copper, and it has gone up, but why? What we got to be asking ourselves is why? And that's where the deep research has to go into. So that way, you're making the best educated decision for yourself on where you're investing. I'll give you another example. I follow a guy, right? Quite a wealthy guy. He used to be from Australia, lives in Dubai. He's been there for 10 years. And he's been talking about this certain stock for quite some time, right? 6 months ago. I don't do anything about it because, again, you're busy, you're doing things, you're listening. But again, when you're listening is one thing, taking action is another thing. Now, if I took action 6 months ago, right, and just went, you know what, I'm going to put in 10 grand, just as, some play money, $1,000, whatever it would be. This stock now is up 1,100% in 6 months. And it's a company that a lot of people know. And I'm not going to say it because I don't want people to go rushing and buying it. And then
I'll say it because that would be the hardest stupidity to buy it now. Just tell us the
right.
name.
A SanDisk.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And I can explain.
And that is one of the layers that you just said, right? That is
Memory.
one of the layers, right? Memory, storage. Everyone's thinking about chips. Yeah, but what's all the memory and storage, right? What are the companies that are actually going to store this? And that's one of the companies, an example. In the last 6 months, I think it's like 1,167%. It's went up. Why? Because again, you got like Wayne Gretzky, right?
Shortage of
Which was the best NHL player, right? Ice hockey player in the world, right? Because he anticipated, he knew where the puck was going to be before anybody else. And that's what made him the best hockey player. And it's the same thing now when investing. You got to know the play before the play is actually happening. Like you just said,
Yeah.
it would be the stupidest thing to buy it right now because it's already went up 1,100%. And that's your opinion, right? But again, it's being at the forefront of this stuff. So when we're talking about it, like if Pauline Hanson did get in, shit, you got to be thinking about it. If you're all property and something like that happen, that can affect the property market because in Australia, we're heavily reliant on population growth. Yes, we're not building enough houses, basic supply and demand, but it's the same thing, just in different categories. So what are you doing, Mark, right now? Like,
Yeah.
I want to give people some tips, right? So all this stuff is happening, right? Like the build out. Like my brother-in-law is a plumber. He's been working on data centers for the last 12, 18 months. I reckon he's going to be working on data centers for years to come. And he FaceTimes me and he posted on Instagram. And it's hard to believe, right? It's just these massive factories with basically just all these machines in them for meters, hundreds and hundreds of meters of this stuff, right? So, and then we got the build out happening. You said, I think it was maybe last podcast or off camera, talking about there's companies now going out there and buying plumbing companies, concreting companies, steel
Yes.
companies, never mind the chips. Might have been you, James, right? So what are you doing as an investor with your investor hat on? How are you taking this information and looking at these 5 layers and what decisions and what is the hypothesis that you're coming to?
So there's a couple of themes that I'm looking at, and I'll touch on them broadly without going into too much detail. And I'll give an actual example so you can see how I invest. But I look at gold. I've been like when I started my Money Markets and Mayhem podcast mid last year, I've been banging on about gold with Bitcoin. We spoke a lot about Bitcoin, but I was banging on about gold a lot 6 months ago, right? If you haven't bought it, if you didn't buy it, I look at the chart now and it's a little bit uninvestable because if you put a significant amount and it drops 30%, which it could do, you're going to get wrecked. So gold, silver, these ones that have already run, I'm looking for a pullback because I want to position in them as well, right? But you've got it, like you nailed it with that quote by Gretzky. You got to skate to where the puck's going. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'll give you one example. Everyone's now saying copper is going to go crazy, and it's already started to move. And so you can look at copper companies, but you've got to go a layer deeper where you can. So recently I bought Rio Tinto. Why did I buy Rio Tinto? Well, they have 55% ownership of one of the biggest copper depositories in the world in Arizona, the Resolution Mine, and it's been tied up for 10 to 12 years in red tape because of, I'm not going to go into detail, but it's being tied up. Now that people are talking about copper shortages, you've got Trump in power, you've got the AI boom and revolution, there is going to be more political pressure to get that mine going. That mine is worth $2.6 to $3 billion a year in revenue to Rio Tinto and BHP. So one of the investments I made recently is Rio Tinto. Hasn't gone up as much as gold and etc., but I'm trying to skate to where I think the puck is going, right? Energy, oil has lagged, right? And that's because the oil price has been so low. But we spoke about energy and how that's going to be a pretty important input, right? And so low prices means that a lot of people are under investing in energy. But there are some of the bigger companies and even some of the smaller ones that are continuing to invest for the future. Those are the ones when oil ultimately spikes to $90, which it will, that you're going to want to own, right? Because you're going to get an asymmetric return. I think one of the most asymmetric bets at the moment, best risk reward, are energy companies, energy producers. And you've got some of the big ones that are breaking out of like 10-year patterns that they're just breaking out now. And you saw silver, if you learn to chart, you saw silver that when it broke out of that like 20-year top of 60, it just went, right? And so, from a technical point of view, you want you want to try and buy things as they break out of those long-term ranges.
And you see, it's good fun there. You see, like back in 2008, post GFC, I went and got the gold and silver bug. You got Mike Maloney from goldsilver.com. He was prolific across the internet. He was Rich Dad's advisor, Robert Kiyosaki. And they've always been, silver and gold and silver and gold. And you get all the gold and silver bugs getting hammered by the crypto bugs and online. And they finally got their day in the sun. But just doing some quick maths back in 2008, it's basically been a dead asset for 17 years, right? And now it's just popped significantly. But not to rub salt into my own wounds, but yeah, if I'd have held that trade for 17 years, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys right now. I'd be I just worked out. I think I had around about 25,000 ounces of it. So way back when it was sub $20, and
Wow. A funny story for my niece's first birthday. I bought her a 10-ounce bar of silver. I think it cost me like $200, and that bar is now worth like $1,800. It's like that's the birthday gift.
Do you reckon she'll take the trade for the candy instead? Just like, hey, I'll take that. So like, you want some candy?
I hope their parents don't let her at it until silver's.
It's funny you talk about the actual physical bullion, because I had it stored in ABC bullion or whatever it was in Sydney in the vaults and all that sort of jazz. And when I made the purchase, I lived in Sydney. I went and actually got a kilo and just put on the coffee table as a bit of a conversation piece. And I've been watching Silver Roll. I looked around the other day and I thought, you're getting traded very shortly. It's just sitting there on top of the wall. And now I'm watching who comes through the door as well. Eric, you're invited.
Yeah, that's funny. That'll be sliding in my pocket.
There's one more. There's one more as well. Like I mentioned, edge devices. You're gonna have, at the moment, AI is like out in a big data center, and then it's like reverberated back into the cloud, and then it comes to your phone and whatever. So eventually, you're gonna have data on AI on your phone, and that's going to require a massive upgrade in your devices. You're starting to see, and maybe James, you want to touch on it quickly, that the new Claude program. But
yeah, I want to touch. I want to ask. You finish. I want to ask something. Something to Raf first.
Yeah.
Before you.
And one of the companies, you can look at, I won't mention the companies for now because, whatever, but you can look at companies that stand to benefit from the upgrade cycle in mobile device chips, right? And so these are the kind of things that nobody's pricing in yet, because that's probably a story for the end of this year, next year. But it's going to shift from like your NVIDIAs, your TMCs, etc., your SanDisks, and it's going to shift to the companies that are creating the hardware for your new devices as we start moving to edge AI, right? So that's another one that I'm kind of looking at different names to buy.
I want to change direction just a little bit and get back to this Claude bot. But like we all talk about these companies and these chips and these things. Who's actually using this, right? Like when you talk about AI, like, yes, we all use ChatGPT and we prep for meetings and we make notes and the rest of it. But I was talking to Raf a couple of days ago, and I'm like, how are you going with your business, right? He's moved to Dubai. They're growing a multi-million-dollar agency at the moment, creating it's a creator economy, and there's so many ideas. And he's like, my business is an AI-led business. That's how I'm building the uptick, right? How are you actually doing that? For the viewers that are here going, I'm using AI. Yeah, I use AI. Yeah. Hey, write my wife a birthday card. How do I reply back? How do I reply back to this email?
Roses are red, violets are blue.
Yeah, correct, right?
Someone just had a 15-year anniversary. You can tell he used GPT for
you know what? My wife's too smart.
Is that how you're using AI, bro? You gotta lift your game.
No, it's called whispering sweet nothings, aka AI. No, but in all seriousness, right? Like you are using AI heavily in your business, right? So a lot of business owners are listening to these podcasts. People want how-tos. They want different things that will give them an edge in this competitive, difficult market of business. So when you say I'm running an AI-led business, right? Because the more AI you use, the more chips that are required, right? The more pieces of that 5-layer cake that Mark is explaining is used. So explain to us what that means. I'm running an AI-led business.
Yeah, I mean, for a bit of context, like the goal for 2026 is to be an AI forward business. And the arbitrage in the business landscape is not your ability to, effectively or very efficiently respond to emails. It's more like, okay, what are the processes in your business and how can I use AI as an accelerant to not only be more efficient, but be an order of magnitude uh, better with the outputs for the clients and the people that I'm working with. So what does that mean practically? Like, how do I just like simplify the crap out of that? If we think about a business, it's like primary functions is about sales, marketing, fulfillment, and finance. Those are the main categories of things. And so the way I'm starting to do it step by step is I'm looking at in my business right now, what's the constraint? Is it sales and marketing? Am I demand constraint? Is it like fulfillment? Am I, supply constraint? So right now it's supply constraint. There's, me and a small team and there's more and more clients coming in. So what I've literally done is like I've gone through every single process that a member goes through inside of what we help install in their business. And each of these things, it's not like here's the issue with people using AI right now. They think it's like omnipotent, like it knows everything, but it is like garbage in and garbage out. So instead of creating like, oh, here's this one custom GPT that's going to sort everything, I look at each of those functions and I feed it like an hour's worth of context to provide like a like just a one um, output that we know 98 to 99% of the result is going to be as if I jumped on a call and spoke to them. That's the goal. So I'm going through each of those friction points for my clients in the fulfillment side to get them the result that they're looking for. So what does that mean practically for you guys? So if you're in a business and you're thinking about applying AI, firstly, identify a constraint, whether it's sales or marketing, finance, or like fulfillment, and then literally map out, okay, when a customer comes in, what happens here? What happens here? What's next? What's next? And then provide a full-on context window. I think when I first started this, I spent literally 2 to 3 weeks just creating my data sources, which means for each of these pillars, I have 1 or 2 pages of context that I'm providing for this one process that a customer goes through before I start prompting any AI to find out how I can simplify or improve this process. And the goal is if I can remove the friction for each client in each of these steps without me being involved, that means my service is way more scalable. Their results are faster, which means it's a self-enforcing, virtuous upward cycle. That's really the goal. And so practically speaking, let's say, I'll give you an example. So let's say we've got a client and they don't know how to create content, for any product that they're trying to promote or service. I'll get them to literally open up Comet Perplexly browser, get
So can you
that.
repeat that again? Open up what?
Yeah. Open up Comet Perplexity. It's a free browser from Perplexity. I get
Yep.
them to go on TikTok. I get them to type in their keywords. So let's say it's like money management podcast, Mark, for example, like they're into like gold, let's say. And I get them to watch like the top 200, 300 videos that's been posted on TikTok. The Perplexity browser does this automatically. Watch it. I tell it to look at what are the products that are pushed, what are the content frameworks that are working, what are the pros and cons. I use that as a data source, and then I put that into Notebook LM, and then have that as a data source that I talk to. And then I have a context window, a persona to say, I'll call it like Jeremy. All right, Jeremy, I want you to red team this. Where are the gaps based on what my service is? And what are the contrarian views here that either reinforce or contradict what I'm saying? And how can I take these elements and put them into what I'm saying? Like that one little action item required 2 data sources to pull. But once you have a pipeline of data sources from these things, and it doesn't take very long to do, like literally just use the browser, it pulls all the stuff for you. You put the data source in. Once it's set up, now you have a foundation of AI within your business and it's practically applicable. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, I mean,
It's
Sorry, that was a lot.
that people will need to listen to this. One thing I just want to, James, just hold on that thought. Notebook LM, what is that? Just so people can understand what it is.
So it's a free thing. You can pay for it, but it's from Google. What that allows you to do is you can have different personas and different notebooks based on function. So I have a notebook LM for fulfillment. I have a notebook LM for sales. I have a notebook LM for finance and for marketing. And I add data sources specifically for that. And so, for example, if I'm trying to come up with content, I have a notebook LM for content for YouTube, a notebook LM for content for IG, and I put in the data sources inside that. Could be news articles, could be YouTube videos, could be literally transcripts, could be full-on books and PDFs. And then I have a prompt window just like in ChatGPT. And instead of it using the worldwide internet where hallucination is really high, Notebook LM removes the hallucination, and it's 99% it's pulling it from the Notebook LM sources that I have approved that this is what I wanted to reference. And just that alone, your output's better. Yeah, Mark.
Rafi, can I clarify something for you, and you can tell me if this is kind of what you're getting at. So one thing that I've found is that if you ask an LLM, a model, a question, there's a whole range of different things that can come back to you. And the likelihood of that question coming back with either an inaccurate answer or an answer that's biased to please you based on your chat history is what occurs. And what you're saying is what you need to do. You're providing specific data sets, context and data sets, not so you can necessarily get a correct answer, but so that you can get high probability answer that the step that they're providing you to do could be the right one. So for example, I use these models a lot to try and work out whether one investment theme is better than another. And I feed it all the data, and then I ask it, like you do, for contrarian takes, because what I'm trying to establish, what I'm trying to get the model to give me is a percentage probability of the path that I should follow rather than a direct answer. And that is the real power of these models, because nothing is ever for certain. But what's really important is that you give it the correct context for it able to give you those probability paths. Is that am I getting that?
Dude, the people that are going to win in the next 3 to 5 years aren't the AI businesses. They're burning money. Like long term, they're going to win. But the people that are going to win are the ones that use it as a tool, because ultimately you're the decision maker in the driver's seat. And if you're going to absolve yourself of decision making and just ask an LLM that's boiling an ocean, the world's information into this one single prompt and response, and think it's going to be applicable to you without all the context and without you making the decision in the driver's seat, you're just kind of flying blindly. So 100%, man. The goal is to get directionally correct with a greater degree of certainty. That's the goal. That's how you want to use LLMs.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, Rafi, in one of the other businesses, business partner's been doing that, just even down to the customer avatar, and you're right, fitting what we want, but then into another layer to give it maybe a little bit more practicality, I suppose, for the people listening as well. Like Tony Robbins, he's doing an event starting tomorrow morning. Does one 3-day event every year. It's called Time to Rise Summit. So I registered for that, and he's got it's called Tony AI. You saw Alex Hormozi launched that when he did his book launch called Alex AI. You've got Russell Brunson, you've got Secrets of Success, and he's pulled all like Nightingale, Carnegie, all those guys, all that data, because he's bought the rights to those. But just back to like a Tony Robbins, he's put all of his life's work into a small language learning model, so it can't hallucinate at all, because you're right, the answers are so varying. And if you go across 4 different large language learning models, I did this morning, and put the same question in, the responses are completely different. Or they were for the question I put in. But if you look at it, again, back to the Tony Robbins example, you log into an app and you might have a question for, about life, about mindset, about whatever, wealth, whatever. You're only going to get the information that's been put into that small language learning model based on Tony's life's work. So you're not going to have a hallucinative answer from it. So it's super specific. And that's, I think that also could be a way that new coaching programs will be built. And that's probably where I'm leading into that as well, Eric, as you get going with it.
Yeah. I mean,
So it's specific to it from a coaching perspective as well, or a education, the old static course of 65 death by module course that no one ever completes is going to be probably out the window as well. With the new frontier coming through, where you might have the fundamental, the base layer, but then it meets you where you're at. And I know it's a different use case to what you're doing, but it's sort of extension of what we're looking at doing with it. Is it so you come in and let's say you're at a certain stage in property development. I'm at this stage, and it could be the town planning stage. And so you'll have a town planner AI that we've fed the information in, and probably a town plan as an example. So then when you get a very educated understanding, and get down to the granular, give me the list of questions I need to go and talk to ABC town planner. So look, before can look like an idiot, but be fairly educated before you even get there. So another use case for the similar sort of model.
I think people need to start thinking deeply on how, like, this is an overwhelming topic for a lot of us, and I think it's a generational thing. I honestly really do, because a lot of the younger guys that I talk to are using it on a different level, right? I was talking to my business partner in a business 2 days ago, and he's one of these ones that are like, you have to be careful with AI. It's one of those things where, like, you don't want it just to for us to become complacent. It's definitely needed. We've been using it for a long time, right? I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to say who it is.
That starts
Right.
with D.
Right. No, but
No?
close, right?
Okay.
But they're talking about building LLMs as an example, language learning models. But he's like, what the issue is? Everyone is sitting there asking the AIs the questions for the answers. He goes, I want the AI to ask me the questions, right? Like, turn it around. So that way the critical thinking is still there, because what happens is, I think we're going to become, and again, we don't know how this is going to pan out. Everyone has their own opinions, but it's like that critical thinking space is still so important, right? For humans, in my opinion. Now, might not be in 5 years or 10 years, who knows? But it's interesting when you start thinking about, because all we do is ask it questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? How about it asking you the questions once it knows enough of the information about the business, as an example?
Eric, you've touched on an extremely important point, and I think if people take nothing from this podcast because it was too meaty, they should listen to this part just here, right here, right? There's two ways to use, in my opinion, there's two ways to use AI effectively at the moment. If you are already a critical thinker, you can build, or you can even get AI to help you build if you know the critical elements to be looking at. What are the second and third order effects? What are the contrarian takes? What are supporting evidence, right? If you're a critical thinker already, you can build 2 or 3 page prompts. You give that prompt to the AI because you know what the critical elements of the questions are, and it'll come back to you with all the information that then gives you probability chances of whatever X, Y, Z happening. If you're not currently a critical thinker and you want to learn to think critically, you can use the Socrates model, right? Where you basically sit there and say, I want to be more critically thinking about this problem or this topic or this thing that I'm trying to solve. Ask me question after question after question about this topic until I land on the most important parts and the things that I need to understand so that I can then, input or build the prompt, right? There's two ways, and it's okay if you're not currently a critical thinker. That's where the way that you just mentioned, getting the AI to ask you the questions is so important because eventually you will land on those critical elements.
If all else fails, and this is not sinking in, go to YouTube. There's videos on all this stuff and more.
Yeah.
And do your initial research, and then go and do exactly what Mark has described.
I want to move on to our next topic, but I just want to give James 60 seconds. He sent it to me yesterday. I looked at it and I was just blown away. It's called Claudebot, which is now not called Claudebot because Claude AI didn't like that very much. So now it's called Moltbot. What is it? 60 seconds. Give us a rundown.
Look, it was late on the wee hours last night when I was looking at it, and the internet's blown up. It's basically melted the internet, and there's a bit of a backstory to it too, which I've just come across in the last hour. Effectively, it's it's not by Anthropic. It's nothing to do with Claude at all. It's another bot that you're on a local server. And Raf, you can jump in here if I've got this wrong. And Mark, it's a local server based.
Only got 60 seconds, mate.
It's brand new, and it basically automates and then starts thinking on your behalf and acting on your behalf as well, for like sending text messages across WhatsApp, Telegram, and a whole. It can communicate in Slack, and starts thinking on a localized machine at the moment. And apparently it's the latest thing on steroids with AI. To that counter that though, there's another source on YouTube that said he's an automations expert that I listened to just for the pod, and he's like, bullshit. Anthropic can already do all this stuff. It's all bullshit. And one of the behind it is effectively that you would notice a lot of the people that are doing all the posts on YouTube, the clickbait, are all the old crypto bros. And those crypto bros are going ballistic on it because there's a token called Claude token that blew up, was a pump sub and a rug pull. So, and so this is like, you got to be careful. And you also get all the then you get, because all the crypto bros are pretty prolific online. They've got a lot of attention. And I cryptos just had a massive pullback, bait and switch. Let's talk about the new thing. And so look, there's then the flip side to it. This guy did point out is it like there's been so many breaches so far because it's got and they haven't set up this fairly clunky way to do it with terminals and all this sort of stuff like that. That because a lot of people are, novices like myself, also set it up, I would screw it up for sure. And you're leaving yourself wide open for security breaches. People can go in, see all your data, rip it all. So yeah, proceed with caution is what I took from that last video. Wait until the noise is out of the way, and there'll be a fucking run on Mac Minis, because that was the device that someone said. So all the research,
Edge computing.
Mate, you know what's funny?
like last night. Last night, one of my MacBooks is with my other business partner, and we were using it for data, blah, 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 whatever. And I was there about to go, hey, Mac, I'm swinging by this afternoon. I want to grab that MacBook because you can run them on MacBooks as long as they fall asleep, da, da, da. And then I watched that video. I said, it's not urgent. I'll wait.
Don't worry about it.
Really fucked it first. Find all the holes in it. If it actually can do, in short, Claude already can do, the actual real Claude can actually do it already set up in a more strategic and safe and secure an environment than this latest overnight sensation, which what I got.
James, from you pumping it the last 24 hours, I was about to like make room in my schedule to go out and use this Claude bot. But now I'm going to ask Raf, should I be using this Claude bot or should I leave it the fuck alone?
Good question.
Raf, is I on point or not?
Listen, James is right. Claude could always Claude and Claude Code could do everything that Claude Bot could do, and now Malbot. I think for anyone who's thinking about doing this, there's a difference between AI, LLMs, and agentic models. That's really the conversation that we're having. And if you need workflows that have to happen 24/7 automatically, then it's worth the effort to create it. But if there's nothing that you need that has to run 24/7 separate from any human input, it's actually it's all a bit of a circle jerk at the moment. It's very few businesses that can really use it effectively. I'm just being honest. So I'm just effectively use the LLMs right now the way that they are. And there's so much there that's untapped potential. Do that first, and then agentic models. If it's something that interests you, Mark, play around with it 100%. But unless you're doing automated trading and stuff, bro, I just don't see the value. Yeah.
And to that end, I mean, if you go, I'll send that link to you guys anyway privately. But also, I mean, there's in that video, the guy that was a host of it, he just went to X and he just put in Claude bot, and you can just see all the negative feedback from it. So yeah, just before, because if you're on YouTube, chances are you're going to see a video pop up. Just go with eyes wide open and stay away from buying a mini Mac just yet.
I've learned two things.
Let's use my affiliate link.
Let's use my affiliate link. I've learned two things in this conversation. One, James isn't a good listener because I told him 60 seconds and he took at least 6 minutes. And two, and two, my Mac Mini, I'm going to keep it. I swear to God, we moved recently and I have one from ages ago. And I've been sitting there. I'm like, no one's going to buy this. I was going to throw it out because it's an Apple product. I'm like, you can't throw out Apple products. So it's sitting in my cupboard in my office. And now I'm just invested in a good hard asset that I've kept over time that it looks like there's going to be demand for it, which is good.
Yeah.
A bit of silver, want a bit of silver, you know, melt it down.
Hey, you never know. Changing gears, I said off camera, I was like, you know what, guys, I think we got to, we're talking about a lot of stuff, what's happening in the world, but we're not talking enough about what's happening in our worlds. And I want these Friday pods to start changing a little bit as well. And and we've been discussing this about talking a little bit more about what we're doing, right? We're in the trenches of a lot of different types of businesses that people don't even know what we're doing. And Mark and I have been, specifically Mark actually, has been working quite hard in the background for the last probably 2 months on a project that has come about. And I'm going to explain to you guys how it came about, and then I'll get Mark to explain exactly what it is. So for those of you guys that aren't aware, Unemployable, we did a large event in Dubai talking about Dubai real estate, wealth creation, Bitcoin, just a lot of different things. And we thought, you know what? I want to go to Dubai anyways. Let's create an event out of it. And there was 60 of us that ended up going, a couple coach buses, checking out all the different Dubai real estate. We did it in collaboration with another company. And it went off. Like the event was amazing. The bus tour, we had, dinners, and we hung out at a beach club for the afternoon on the last day. And it was incredible. And I've got a very good friend of mine, dear friend of mine, another friend of mine that has moved to Dubai 3 years ago. And he's got a multitude of successful businesses. And he's been doing a lot in the Dubai real estate market, right? So he's been buying a lot of property. He's buying, land. He's starting to develop there. He's doing a lot of cool things. And he's very, very connected. And he's connected with another guy that's been there since 2010. And they're doing a lot of real estate deals. Anyways, Eric being Eric, going, man, and this is in my mind going, this is a great opportunity. Like, I honestly think, right, the world is becoming a smaller place, and it's so much easier to start investing in different areas. And we had a bunch of clients that actually bought in Dubai. And I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, I've got the connections there, right? With my friends, they got all the connections with the developers. They're actually Arab themselves. They speak the language, they speak Arabic. And I'm just like, we've got an audience, and I think I myself want to invest overseas as well, get some money out of Australia, just to diverse, right? Just to diverse. Not that I think money in Australia is not safe or anything, but just to diversify a little bit. And Mark and I caught up, and we were chatting, and just out of left field, I forget how the conversation actually even started. But it ended up being that, for those of you guys that don't know Mark, he's been in real estate in the past, sold over 3,000 blocks of land. That's where he's built a lot of his, wealth up to invest in a lot of other things. And we got talking, and one thing led to another. And Mark was just like, man, I'm interested. Like, tell me more. And then that led to another conversation. And it's like, shit, man, like, I'm losing sleep over this. Like, I can feel it. I can feel the fire in my belly coming back again. And one thing led to another. And Mark's been working on some real cool stuff in the background. And I thought it would be great, a great opportunity, Mark and I both, to mention what it is on the podcast. And it's still very new, but that way you guys can start learning a little bit about what we're doing in the background. And then eventually, 6, 12, 18 months, 2 years from now, when everyone's still watching the pod and going, man, I remember when, you were talking about this, just like I remember when you guys had 500 subscribers and we just cracked 40, which is pretty cool. And coming along for the journey. So Mark, tell us, what have you been working on?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with that line of thinking, Eric. This is something that this is a brand new business venture, and it's something that I want to track across my socials, across my podcast, across this podcast. And we want to kind of let you guys in behind the curtain of how we build this business from start to finish, so that you can actually see some real practical examples of like how the sausage is made. To frame the opportunity, if I look at, like, and Eric, I'm sure you'll agree, the majority of my net wealth, like a large majority of my net wealth, has come through property, and not by selling property. I was like one of the largest selling land agents in Australia, sold 3,000 blocks off the plan. But my wealth came from investing in that property while I was selling it. That's where my real wealth came, not from my income. It came from the investments that I made. And over the last couple of years, we've been talking a lot about gold and Bitcoin and things like that. But to get the same size returns that you would get on property, you really have to go all in on these assets, because with property, you have the ability to leverage, right? 5-to-1 leverage and things like that. You'll even, if you even listen to some of the conversations that Adam's had, with when he was running Reliable, a lot of the cash that they made during that time, he invested in property and tripled his money in Burleigh real estate, Burleigh commercial property over the time. So if you look at a lot of the most wealthy people in the world, other than your Elon Musks and your big business owners, your unicorn business owners, a lot of the world's wealth is accrued through property. And so that's something that I think about a lot, right? When I look at my track record. And we've spoken about the macro, we've spoken about politics, and you're seeing that a lot of the Western countries at the moment are going through some massive changes. And at the forefront of those changes are the fact that Western countries are heavily in debt, and a society that's heavily in debt, usually has to raise taxes on its citizens. And one of the big ways, if most of wealth stored in property, one of the big ways that countries can tax their citizens is through property. So my macro take is that I think investing in global property around the world, is going to be one of the biggest investment opportunities over the next 10 to 20 years, especially as interest rates start to rise in, Western countries and around the world as well. There's a handful of areas that we've currently got our eye on. I've got contacts in Brazil that are investing in Brazil, and many people would say, well, there's some political uncertainty, but you'll see with the whole Venezuela thing in the US, that landscape is starting to change. So Latin America starts to become a possibility. Brazil, Eric, you've got some contacts in Mexico that
Yep.
you've spoken to. Again, there might not be the time today, but there could come a time where that's the property market that we should be looking at. We've got contacts in Bali. Bali's all the rage at the moment. And like Eric said, Dubai has been massive over the last couple of years. Rafi's there for a wide range of reasons, tax, golden visa. There's a bunch of different reasons. And so what's happening is, at the moment, Dubai is like the pinnacle of all these areas. More millionaires from around the world are moving to Dubai than any other country in the world. And the majority of the property that they're selling is off the plan. So that basically means you put your deposit down and you don't settle on the property for 2-3 years, sometimes 4 years, depending on when the property is ready. In that time, because so many people are moving to these areas, and the supply is still so short, it's pushing the price of these properties up. So before people are even settling, they're making capital growth on their property in an advantageous tax regime. So I looked at the opportunity. I kind of looked at the things that Eric has done with Unemployable and the Dubai property already, and thought, this is a huge opportunity. I think this has got amazing potential. The ability to reach people, I think, is one of, there's real estate agents out there everywhere that are trying to sell you things, right? But I don't think that's the angle that we want to approach it from. We want to approach it from more of a black book service type angle, where we make because what Eric does best is make connections. And so where we make the connections in these regions, and we go out and we do the research, we do the, making sure we vet these regions and make sure that, because ultimately capital growth is the most important thing. And we want to try and bring the best deals from around the world to our audience, because we think it's something that our audience is extremely interested in. And the reason that we think that is because we're interested in it. Eric and I want to go over there in the next couple of months and buy our first property, because we think that's where the opportunity lies moving forward. So yeah, I think that's the genesis of the idea. If you want to add anything more.
Yeah, it's interesting because I look at it as there's two angles. There's the people that already have, are building wealth and have wealth, and what are they looking for to preserve their wealth, and how are they doing it? They want returns, right? Returns are becoming harder and harder to come by in Australia, right? To actually get half decent returns here. But there's so many other countries out there. Dubai is an example, Bali, even Mexico. I know people that own property in Mexico, and they're getting very, very good returns, right? And there's another avatar, right? Another avatar is the people wanting to invest in physical property. The issue is they're getting price out of the market here, right? Unless you have had property already, or unless you're getting, a hand-me-down or getting help from parents, a person on an average wage will never be able to enter the property, own a property on their own. That's why I keep saying fractional ownership will continue to be a thing moving forward, because there'll be less property. Less property held in more hands on that side from fractional, and moving forward there'll be people looking for return. I mean, people looking to get into the market as well that can't get in the market here. That goes, you know what? I don't want a fractional ownership. I just want to own something myself. Overseas, you can still buy things for half decent prices, like in Dubai.
Half the prices.
Right? That's what I mean, right? You could buy stuff in Dubai. I mean, you're not going to be beside the Burj Khalifa as an example, or downtown in these areas, they're going to be in the outer suburbs, but you still can get stuff for 4, 5, 600,000, and they're on payment plans, and it's totally different. There's no interest, that you're paying down the principal, and these are all things that we want to educate. So not only is it just going to be, a service of, hey guys, let's see where we can place your money overseas through real estate. There's going to be an education process around this,
Yeah.
because every country, right, has different regulations and different processes on how to buy property. In Bali, you can still buy villas from prominent developers, right? We're not just talking the ones that, off the side of the street, that, ones that, they're so, I heard someone the other day saying, they seen a property that was so moldy and moist inside the property that there was mushrooms growing from the wall, internal walls, right? And this is the stuff that people need to be careful of as well.
Mm.
And this is where the education process comes in. So it's
Eric,
exciting. I mean, yeah.
Eric, just on that point, one of the things that led to my success in property, and I think I probably bought and sold over 30 to 40 properties over my time selling land, is I was able to identify properties in regions that were undervalued or were going to grow due to the infrastructure that was coming, and I was able to also look at properties within regions that were under market value versus the other properties in that area. And so a lot of the pre-work that I've been doing for Dubai so far is about where to play. And we've identified 4 different areas to play in Dubai. And we can talk we'll, over the next couple of weeks, months, whatever, we'll do specific podcasts on this kind of stuff. But we've identified 4 regions to play in Dubai. To your point, waterfront prime, that's the first region, right? But obviously it's going to come with a price ticket. The next region are the central growth corridors. So the areas where the majority of the current development is happening, and you want to be able to identify properties within those corridors that are under market value. The third area, which touches on those people who are looking for something more affordable, are the emerging infrastructure zones. So that's when you've got new malls, new what's it called? Infrastructure routes or travel routes like buses, bike paths, transport routes, right? And then you've got the villa and townhouse belt, which is more like an owner-occupier area. But our goal is to become experts in all these areas and experts in the property in those areas, so that we can make sure that we're only bringing, things that are going to have the highest chance of return. One other market you didn't mention, and we probably think it's going to be a smaller market. It's those people that are looking for optionality, right? We talk a lot about mobility and the ability to pick up and move, right? Owning a property in a place like Dubai gives you that optionality and that ability to get permanent residency at some stage down the track, if that's something that you're after.
Just to add a bit of levity to this, I took a few notes down there, which is great. And I'm just going to rattle these off and see if we can sort of draw a conclusion out there in the audience. We've got Eric talking about Mexico. He can speak the language pretty much. Black book, good returns, decent prices, payment plans. It leads me to Sinaloa or something along those lines. I mean,
What was that? Was that last bit?
leads me to the Sinaloa cartel.
Mexico. He's talking Mexico. My contact's in Mexico. Yeah. You know what, James? I always pick the harder road, mate. On the harder road. I'm the cleanest guy around.
Decent returns.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I love it. We're definitely not renting private planes, that's for sure. But yeah, guys, that's a little bit of what we're doing now. If you guys want to know, we don't even have a landing page. We don't even have an exact name to the business yet, right? But there's so much work that's been done in behind the scenes. But if you want to know more about this business and what we're doing and the opportunities that are going to be coming about from this, with this international kind of a real estate business, just email hello@unemployable.com.au and just introduce yourself, who you are, what you want to know more of. We'll put you on a database. And as we get more and more information, we'll definitely reach out to you guys. But really what we're trying to do is just, a good job isn't good enough anymore. A good business isn't good enough anymore. People got to think outside the box now. And we want to help more people doing that, going, you know what, actually, you don't have to move to Dubai to buy property there. You don't have to move to Bali. You could still live in Australia if you love it here and you want to pay the tax here and the rest of it, but you can still own property outside your 5-kilometer radius. Now, we're coming up to time, guys, and I just wanted to finish off the podcast For those of you guys that didn't watch the last Friday podcast and you're wondering why Raf is here, and obviously there's a familiar face that everyone knows that isn't here by the name of Adam Hudson. Adam is no longer going to be on the Friday podcast with us. He's still involved in the business. He's still doing the SaaS signal on the Unemployable channel, but he's just at a different stage in his life, and he wants to talk about things that he's really passionate about. And we're talking about a lot of stuff about business and wealth creation within Australia. And he doesn't even live here anymore, right? So he's going to be talking about the things that he's passionate about on the SaaS signal, on the Unemployable channel, and still involved in the business. But obviously, I just wanted to acknowledge Adam. All of us wanted to acknowledge Adam. I mean, he's been an integral part of the podcast, right? Playing a big role in building to what Unemployable has become, right? It's been a collaboration of minds. And we're not here trying to replace Adam. For those of you guys that know Adam, there isn't a replacement for Adam. So that's not what we're trying to do here, right? But the mission of the podcast stays the same, but a little bit different, right? We're still going to have honest conversations. We're going to be speaking about business, property, wealth, take you a little bit in behind the scenes of our worlds and what we're doing and how we're using things. That's why I want to ask Raf, okay, it's all good. I use AI. What does that actually mean? What can someone listen to on the podcast right now that they can take away in trial, right? Like go to Notebook LM and actually find out what it is and have a play with it as an example, right? And the show will continue to evolve. And obviously we're going to be introducing new voices like Raf, and his voice will become louder and louder and louder. And I just want to say again, thank you to Adam for what you've put in, and thank you, Raf, for being on today. And he'll continue to be on moving forward next week, and hopefully the following week and the week after, because we've ever since the day I've met you, Raf, I met you at an event that I was speaking at, and you were speaking, and you just had the X factor, and you've been in my mind, right? From a business perspective only, not this for it that to sound weird. I know you've been on James' mind for other reasons, but like, right? But you've just had the X factor, right? Like as soon as we had you on the podcast, and you mentioned, "Can I double click on that?" I'm like, I like this guy. I like this guy. So yeah, guys, that's a little bit about what we're doing at Friday Pod. I think for the first one without Adam, we did pretty good. And I'll definitely try and guide the traffic and keep track, because I know that a lot of the comments are like, but Adam's great at just, putting the barriers and the boundaries and everyone staying in their lanes. And I think we did pretty good today. We didn't go off on too many tangents. So
I agree. Hey guys, you guys are gonna love Raf. Like he is such a brain and such an intellectual, but I think his biggest skill is his ability to teach. And that's something that Adam was just sensational at. Adam was a Superman at being able to teach and simplify complex topics. And I think Rafi definitely has that X factor. So, you're going to hear so much more from Rafi in the coming weeks when he has puts more of a stamp on the show.
Boys, you're gassing me up a lot, man.
He's a brilliant teacher, right? And his ability to explain things is sensational, probably better than the three of us. So
yeah,
it's really fun.
We did a lot of deep thinking on who can we bring, and there's so many people that we can bring onto the pod, and we strategically picked Raf for a reason, and that is to provide as much value to the viewer, to the listener. Right? I can talk to Raf whenever I want. You can't, and these are going to be the times where you need to listen. So, guys,
and especially when we've got someone that is at the bleeding edge of technology or implementation, that has material upside in business specifically, and you articulate it so well, Raf. There's AI, then there's actually use of AI, getting results from it. So I'm looking forward to unpacking that as we go. And seeing what golden nuggets we can actually put into our own businesses, and come back to the pod and go, Raf was doing this, we did this, and this was the result. So you can see again, like Mark said, how the sausage is made with that business, for how we can implement it in ours moving forward, because times are changing for sure.
I agree.
Boys,
all right, guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, all right, Raf. Thanks, guys. That's the end of this pod, and we'll see you next week on the next one.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you'd like to watch another episode, just click there.